Welcome to another episode of Healing Her Halo. I'm your host, Patience Murray, and today I'm joined by Jeanne Assinthe. She's the dynamic owner of Amitie, a reputable virtual wellness agency specializing in trauma informed therapeutic services. As a licensed clinical social worker, she brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the field of mental health and trauma treatment. Her dedication to personal and professional development is evident of her role as qualified supervisor, where she mentors and supports other practitioners in their journey toward providing trauma informed care. With her exceptional skills as a consultant, she offers valuable insights and guidance to organizations seeking to implement trauma informed practices within their systems. And as a program developer, she demonstrates her creativity and innovation by designing comprehensive healing programs tailored to meet the unique needs of individuals and groups impacted by trauma. Furthermore, she is an experienced retreat facilitator, creating meaningful in person wellness experiences for couples, small groups, and companies. And as a trainer, she uses her expertise to educate and empower others with the necessary tools and knowledge to provide trauma informed care. And additionally, her meditation skills enable her to facilitate constructive dialogue and resolution in challenging situations. Through her relentless dedication, she continues to make positive impact in the field of trauma informed therapy, promoting healing and well being for all. Jeanne, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much, Patience, for inviting me, for being such a gracious host. I really appreciate the invitation.
Wow. You're such a beautiful soul. I just really want to dig into your name. Your name and the name of your business is so beautiful. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So, for a very long time, I actually hated my name because my official name is like Jeanne Assinthe, is what my father signed, which translated to Jean is probably an Assente. So, we'll dive into that.
Mm.
As the island man, most Haitian men never fully accept accountability of
Mm.
fathering until
Mm.
needing to. So my mother, who was uneducated individual, didn't really realize what he did. So when I turned 18, the first gift I gifted myself was graciously petitioned the court to drop the Pobab, because I thought by then I was clear I was innocent. And if I wasn't, I was happy to change my last name to whatever. But I
Yeah.
wanted to honor my mom, who really wanted to call me Asianie. So I changed my name to Jeanne Asianie Assinthe.
Wow. That's a bold move.
I tend to rock the boat too with people. So
Yeah.
definitely, I think it was an opportunity to advocate for my mom.
Mm.
So I did that. And to answer your question, Amitié came up with the name based on the concept of like I tend to stay away from French, but it was something that I needed to acknowledge, especially considering the fact that French, like it or not, good, bad, or indifferent, is a huge part of our history as a Haitian community. So I ended up naming it Amitié because the translation of the word itself is beautiful. It translates to friend, but it's not just friend, but it's the components of friendship, right? So I have a friend of mine that says, service and gratitude is essence of friendship, but friendship translating in French is like the trinity, the being, your community, and the close community as a whole for society. But in trinity in the church, I grew up Christian, so in the church, we talk about the trinity, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So in mental health, the most appropriate and important relationship is the relationship with oneself. So it's a wordplay on that because it's the past version of ourselves, the present version of ourselves, and the ultimate version of ourselves, which is still pending as possibility. So I thought it was a good translation to use. So the had the name Amitie.
That's absolutely beautiful. And I never knew that. I never knew about the Trinity within the mental health and how it's about the relationship with yourself. How did you come across that? Is that something that you found in your studies, or is this something that you discovered within yourself through your own journey?
I think it's a combination. So, a little self disclosure, I suffer ADHD. So that translates to I can't keep my brain shut down as I needed. So
Mm.
the title itself of the diagnosis inaccurate titleship because hyperactivity is not necessarily what happens all the time, and the attention deficit is exactly opposite of what actually happened when someone like myself suffering from ADHD. We actually see everything, we hear everything, we just have no actual executive functioning capacity to implement anything. So I'm very intentional about being mindful of that. So that created an opportunity for creativity and for me to really dive into the world of La La Land. So what that means, often I have spurt of ideas and flight of ideas, and I have no sense of time. So I just follow it like a little rabbit, right? When it comes to my actual field of study, I didn't actually study mental health initially. I started my degree studying women studies and religion. That was quickly
Wow.
altered, and I ended up graduating my undergrad with criminal justice and legal studies.
Well, what inspired the changes?
Initially, with the legal study, I always been interested. My father was an attorney back home as well as in the U.S., but that was just like a way of life for conversation. But religion was the thing that I saw even as a child. So many arguments about so many like conflict was around religion. So I was curious. I tend to be drawn towards wherever the conflict is, wherever there's discrepancies, like my attention naturally drawn to that. So that's one of the reasons why I chose like religious study and women's studies, also because I saw a lot of cultural and societal biases around gender. So I wanted to learn more. My education background is always about curiosity and leaning into tell me more, until whatever more there is off-putting for me, then I make a U-turn. So after the second semester,
The U-turn, I love that.
I discovered a lot of the conflicts that were around gender biases and stuff like that. There was a lot of hypocritical like theology behind it. There are a lot of lack of transparency about discussion, especially when we talk about history. I've always been a history junkie. By culture, we talk a lot about history through storytelling and stuff like that. So in school, a lot of the history that was being taught, I was like, that's not the story I've been told. So it was a lot of contradiction. So I figured I'll go somewhere else. So I drawn to policy, so criminal justice was interesting to me. So I switched my degree. But I definitely carry a lot of those things with me as I transition. And it wasn't until after my undergrad, the intention was to go to law school. But I thought law school and being a lawyer was actually a little bit reactive. Reactive meaning like my role and my intention would only be relevant after, excuse my friend, shit has hit in the fence. As an
I
attorney,
see.
defending or being proactive, it's like I'm only engaged in issues that has already happened, and I wanted to do something that was proactive, reactive, but also preventive and interventionist. So that led me to mental health, because I was like, I don't know all the work that was around me, but at that time I was like, okay, who do I know in the professional realm and what are the impact that I appreciate? So the natural thing that came to me was my therapist. I had an excellent therapist from the time I was 13 till I was 19, and I really appreciated the role that she played in my life. So when I told her I was making the switch, she almost had a heart attack because she was like, no, like you are so better equipped for like.
No,
She was not supportive. She's like, "You're gonna be signing up for a lifetime of volunteering, and you deserve so much more than that."
no.
I was like,
Well,
"That's
I
interesting."
think I love the fact that even down to you changing your name, down to you changing this focuses of study, you're not afraid to make a pivot, right? You're not afraid of change and moving forward into who God is calling you to be without any need of any second opinions or cosigns or validation from anybody else, no matter who it is. And I absolutely love that about you so much. And okay, so I love what you said. I just want to back up a little bit because you said a lot of great stuff here. But you were saying how the experience with the criminal law, and it's more of a reactive, right? So you're focusing on responding to things that already happened, right? And as opposed to being on the side of treating the individual or helping the person not even, make certain decisions, or, treating the mind, treating, the actual brain health as well, to make sure that people make better decisions, so we don't have to go through this constant cycle of what it seems like experiences repeating themselves, shootings repeating themselves, just traumatic experiences and tragedies repeating themselves over and over and over again. And it just kind of gets exhausting. How did you break out of that? Because usually when some people are on a certain track, they kind of stick with that, right? But what was the indicator that you needed to make the switch?
It's me paying attention to myself. So, backing up a little bit, right before I had to make that decision, I was about 20 when I needed to switch because I started college at 17, but I couldn't actually start college because even though I was registered and ready to start, I was in foster care. So I couldn't go off campus until I actually turned 18. So waiting, thank God I'm a summer baby. So that meant I had to start the summer semester. So starting in the summer semester, I had to lean into myself. But one thing that I had, and I've witnessed that for my friends and even my partner, that the average individual doesn't have, and I take it as a pride for the journey of having been in foster care, is that I had an access to mental wellness services, and that gave me a lot of tools for me to be able to identify my own discomforts, as well as like leaning and learning how to respond to my own being. So, and when I was in foster care, and I got into foster care from the time I was 13 and I aged out in foster care. But when I got there after a less than 6 months, the foster parent I had recommended psychiatric help for me because I was not eating and I was isolating and stuff like that. So she recommended that I went to a psychiatrist. The judge ordered it, which the doctor recommended medication management. And like I said to you earlier, I tend to be a redeemer, like I rock the boat. So I refused medication management at the time because the simple question I asked the person was, the pill you're about to give me, will it actually take away the thing that is creating a problem? And he said no, but it will actually help me understand or give me the capacity to experience the recovery better. So I said, okay, I understand that, but I was also a science geek. I love chemistry, so I understand the concept of like interactions. So I was like, okay, is there any other way to unpack without the chemical support? And keep in mind, I'm 13. So that was already weird looking back, right? So that was curious enough for him to actually indulge me because nobody ever actually counter what a court order recommendation is, right? So he told me, yes, there are things like modern medicine, there are herbalists and stuff like that. So instead, he partnered me up with an Asian practitioner that was nearby the property. That person taught me about herbs and the impact they can have and our hormones and our chemicals and stuff like that and our mindfulness. He taught me how to meditate. He taught me how to and recommended pet therapy. So I had a pet therapist that came over so we could reestablish a sense of trust and stuff like that. So with that in mind, by the time I was 19, 20, I kind of learned enough about my being and my body so I could actually lean in or step back or sometimes just freeze to unpack when there were discomfort. And finishing school, I had a lot of discomfort about going into. And the discomforts were simple things like I would stall registering for the LSAT, right? Or I would have appointment to meet with certain people for advice, and something about it would just feel off, or I was not as motivated or interested. There was no
Right.
true like flow. Whenever there's a lack of flow for me, that's an indication of like, hey, stop, pause, like recognize what you are feeling, allow yourself to feel it, investigate it a little bit so you can figure out what's the root of it, and then nurture whatever shows up without judgment.
Okay. You just gave us a whole master class on how to be in tune with yourself. But I'm pulling out a couple different things because what you're saying about the therapy and how beneficial it was for you, the tools that you were able to pull from to be able to do the introspective work, to identify what you need, when you need it, and how to make a change so you can be in flow. And you were doing this since you said 13?
Hmm.
That's amazing. And shout out to your parent, like shout out to your parents for making sure that you had these um access to these resources to be able to do this work so early on. Is that's a that's a blessing. Like that's a huge blessing. Like even now, like after the experience that I went through with the Pulse nightclub shooting, I have yet to really have a therapist like
Mm.
on a regular basis. So me hearing you say this since 13, that you've had this consistent work, being put in, it just makes me understand why you are who you are and why you are so able to make decisions and stand on them, because you understand yourself and you do have that connection with yourself. Thank you for sharing that, like, with us, because if we needed any confirmation that we need to go to therapy, this is
That
it.
it's a taboo thing, and especially in our culture, like as Black and Brown communities, it's frowning up on. And I joke now with my 13-year-old who's been in therapy herself since she was 11, is that hey, first my dad did a good job with educating us about like our futures and leaning into what comes natural to you, that you are gifted. Just you have to lean into whatever gift, because God equip us with whatever we're gonna need to put food on our own table and for self-sufficiency. You just have to trust whatever that is. If it's your cooking, if it's your cleaning, if it's your capacity to listen, if it's your creativity, whatever it is, if it's your outgoing personality, there's a natural thing there that is a gift that just is ready to be unwrapped, right? And often we don't really get that validation from our parents. So for me, I had an extra dose of it when I went to foster care, because in the foster care system, you had to get evaluated, you had to be monitored and stuff like that. So it was just about the state, but a lot of people have the same access. They just review that accessibility with a sense of judgment. I knew early on whatever happened to me, it was not a choice of my own. It was not my own accountability. I was a victim of it. So I didn't hold any judgment over myself. So that helped me a little bit in processing and accepting the support, because I wasn't shamefully holding on to anything. It wasn't my shame to hold. And often we hold on to other people's shame even after we've been victims of that person's behavior or action.
So I do want to say thank you for just sharing about your personal story with being adopted and being in the system, right? So, how did that transition happen, right? So, how did you go from being where you are to being in the system?
So, just like I said, I like to rock the boat. So does my mom. She's literally like a little firecracker. I have been born in Haiti. My dad was very influential. My mom wasn't so much. So there's a lot of oppression there. But it seemed like nothing really stopped her. So, for one, I had a model behavior where I saw her persistently fight against a sense of injustice, including when my father got full custody of me in Haiti because he was an attorney and well connected, and she was an illiterate mother. And that never stopped her. Kind of illegal here, but she would literally discover wherever he was hiding me, and she would steal me back, to the point where he was like, forget it, and he just left me with her. Leaving me with her, I got an opportunity to see her side of like reality, like a working class, the persistency, the level of resilience and stuff like that. Now he moved to the state, got married. When he sent after me, it's kind of like a position of privilege. Like, you're gonna move to the states with your father to have an opportunity to develop like a better life. Quickly after that, I was 12, less than a year later. There are a lot of inappropriate behaviors, including sexual abuse, which I became a victim of. So, with that sexual abuse, my father decided to, when he paid attention to me and stuff like that, noticed something's wrong, he got ahead of it and took me to a doctor, discovered I was pregnant through that. So, from that, I had to keep in mind, just moved to a country less than a year later, put enough of like the pieces of my English together, and actually advocated and told, and because he told the doctor that I was sexually active with my little boyfriend, and he knocked me up and then left the state. So that's why he was trying to be a good old father and support me to get an abortion. So I actually countered that and told the doctor the truth, and she was gracious enough, which is one of the primary example of trauma informed, because that doctor was enough like aware enough to prioritize my safety. So in the trauma informed, we have a few components that is required, like safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration, so that can empower. And we need to be aware of like culture, history, gender awareness, recognition of the trauma and what impact traumas have on an individual, and then look for like holistic approach that honor the person's being, history, and everything else, whatever different or familiarity may be. So then we can enable the person to develop resiliency, and we move from a place of like strength base that give an opportunity for ongoing support. So she started that trend, planting that seed of who I am today, because she actually prioritized my safety. She she called a friend of hers who was another practitioner that was Creole speaker. While I was in the room with her, that person was able to give some information, get some information from me. And then she gave me her personal cell phone that she had in her body in the moment, showed me how to put it on silence. And then she was going to contact the authorities. And then at any time, if I felt discomfort or any sense of like out of like routine structure with my father, to dial her number, and then or dial 911 so I can get proper support, and then how to put the 911 like emergency SOS on, so that they could find my position. So she did all of that within like the first 15 minutes of meeting me. That was
That's
like
amazing.
godsend, and that's something that a lot of people don't actually have appropriate training
Mhm,
on as service
mhm.
providers. And it's not just service provider as a mental health or physical health, it's all sort of services, things like the nail salon or the hair store, a lot the bars and the clubs. There are a lot of people that are in inappropriate situation that enter those places. People just don't know how to respond appropriately with that. So that's a whole other conversation. But her doing that is how I ended up in foster care, because sure enough, my dad did make a few attempts for, fleeing the country and all that stuff. But I was able to find some level of support, because she took a few minutes to go through the safety protocols with me, and that established a sense of like rapport, where I was able to establish trust with her and felt like I wasn't by myself. And that empowered me to actually speak up and dare to put a SOS on my father when he was attempting to flee.
Wow. Thank you so much for just going deeper into your story with me and just feeling safe enough to share that with us, because your vulnerability and you showing up and sharing what happened to you, it's going to free somebody else. And it's going to be that eye opener to the person that may be handling a situation, or maybe they're dealing with people and they don't know how to navigate in the situation or what to do. Explaining what was helpful for you being in that situation with someone else who knew how to handle your heart in that moment. That's the practical tools that, I really prayed that I could get from this conversation, and also anybody that I speak to, but these real tangible things that people can apply right now to make sure that they can save the next person or help the next person. um, I can't even imagine. And how old were you at this time when this was
13.
happening?
13. It's scary because now I have a 13-year-old, and all she worries about is Korean soap operas. And I'm like, oh, the privilege. But I understand that's not the culture, and that is why healing is so important, because me doing the work is part of the reason where I was able to do that. And what was potentially at risk without the proper support is me at 13 years old having to have mothered a child from my own father, and that innocent being would have been subject to all the inadequacies and
Mhm.
discomfort and sufferance, and that I was going to be exposed to.
You are such a brave woman. You are such a brave woman.
I appreciate like God's we all have like this, we all have purpose, because if you think about from just the conception process, right? There's so many other potential being that could have exist in your response. So it's just the fact some of us are born is like, all right, we're already winning this race, right? So there's purpose in that. If we go back to Christianity, that says all is within purpose and all would work well for the greater good at the end. Often we say these things and we don't actually apply them. Similarly to when people say, "Oh, God will deliver me," but I always like bring some of the parables. Like, how do you think God is going to deliver you? Like, there is nothing in the world or in treatment that prevents somebody from actually acknowledging whatever the religious background is, compared to actually getting your help. Whatever you are, whomever you practice, whatever you believe in, it's all in alignment with mental health support, especially trauma informed support, because it comes from, first of all, validating your own existence and recognizing what works and what doesn't work for you, what is flowing for you, and what's causing discomfort. Anything that causes a little bit of discomfort, pain, or suffering, in my book, is what translates into trauma. But we don't pay attention to that, so they just pile up. They add
Mhm.
up on top of each other, and then before you know it, in therapy I use the word detritus. Detritus is Latin for shit. Yeah, it's
Oh.
nice. A lot nicer to talk about detritus than really talk about bags of shit that we carry.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily our own bag of detritus, but often that are passed along over and over and over. So if we think of trauma, like the first generation of whomever you are had a perfect robe or a dress, but they had some level of discomfort, pain, or suffering that created a stain. But they didn't really investigate it, they didn't really resolve it, and they just passed the same honorable piece of clothing to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. Now suddenly you're sitting with a dress full of, like, or you could look at my dress with the hose and the whips and stuff like that. Although this is supposed to be fashion, my daughter said I should be sued. But,
The distress.
but it's an evidence of history. But
Mhm.
we don't really investigate. We don't try to understand it. We just assume all of the accountability for it. It's not ours. We have to unpack, and we need grace and compassion for that. So when we talk about vulnerability, vulnerability is understanding that I have a few loose screws and I have a few missing and brokenness, and so does everybody else. But collectively, what makes us human, what makes us valid member of the human race, is the fact that we all have that. So I shouldn't feel ashamed or guilty for having that. I should feel like I'm safe within the human kindness and the human, being, to actually expose my vulnerability to the next person, in the trust that the other person is going to expose their own, because collectively we will realize we often have the missing pieces of the others. It's like a puzzle. You're holding my piece and I'm holding your piece. But if I don't show you what I've got, you're not going to show me what you've got. So transparency, vulnerability is part of the process. Often
That's so brilliant.
don't care for that.
That's so brilliant what you just shared. And the I had a previous interview with Christine Handy, and she's a breast cancer survivor, and she talked about borrowing courage from others when you don't have it. And I feel like it's like that puzzle piece, like you're saying, that if I'm not vulnerable, if I'm not sharing, and you're not sharing, then we don't know, what each other has that's going to be able to, be that bridge to help each of us get to whatever side that we need to get to in each moment. So I thank you for putting that in that exact way, because that was just amazing. I needed to hear that. It was like confirmation for me. But I want to talk about what you do with your organization, because you have a wealth of knowledge. So how do you apply this in your practice? Like, how do you take all of that, everything that you've been through, everything that you've experienced? How do you tailor your programs and help others?
So we every program at Amitie is from like a trauma informed perspective. So everything that is created, everything that's happening. If you see, like, for example, this ball behind me, it's a ball that it's a evidence of one of a trauma group where we talk about the a Japanese like theory where in Japan the vases that are broken are the most valuable vases because when they are broken they put back into with gold, right? So that gold increased the value and the worth of that pieces. So we imply the same mindset in our treatment and our services, starting with making sure that services are accessible. Like anybody can actually request or establish like services at any time. And my caseload reflect that. I have a global caseload, right? Because anywhere in the world, the person can just go at any time and book the service. The only boundaries is within 24 hours of availability. So they cannot book stuff right away unless if they like already an established client, then they can ask the provider like, hey, I have an emergency, do you have any availability? And some providers will make space, or sometimes we have cancellation, so we have a running cancellation list, so we may be like, hey, I don't have this time, but this person just canceled, can you make that time? Because we want to make sure people feel like they have access to trauma informed services of qualified individual, and every one of our practitioners have their own unique experience, and they are within the black and brown community. We did that intentionally because there were not that many people who look like us trying to understand our stories. So if they don't understand the history, the culture, perspective, it's going to be difficult to meet us where we are. So that's a big thing that we have. A lot of our providers are African American, Haitian, Latinas. So then that way, we meet the unique stories of each one of us. The other thing, back to that group, the part of the group is like we try to redefine trauma. We redefine trauma based on your own personal. So as people start that group, they buy their own beautiful vase that they feel are beautiful, and they break it, and then the pieces of the stories they're starting to share with one another, and by the end of it, they make a beautiful piece like so.
I love that. I love that so much, and that the messaging and how it's interwoven into the way that you even, put the program together.
So
It's so beautiful.
we try to have programs that are interactive. I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you another.
Okay.
So we also use things like virtual reality. And
Oh.
business. So that way, it's not just a dialogue. Therapy is not as boring as people think. We don't just focus on trauma. We meet you where you're at. I have people that have been seeing for over 3 years, and the primary trauma that led them to therapy have not even been unpacked because we follow the pace of your capacity. So virtual reality, given the fact that we have a global clientele, sometimes we have to help people put things into perspective because scientifically we can tell when you are experiencing a trigger of your trauma and stuff like that, your body physiologically go through things. Your memory is impactful to your body. There's a book that one of the pioneer in the field wrote that says the body keeps score, Dr.
Mhm.
Vega. So your body's keeping score of everything that you went through. So we try to connect the body and the mind during dialogue. So virtual reality help us do that because post session we can have like a body heat, and there's opportunities to ask certain question to triggers and the person responding, and we can discuss it to say, hey, during this conversation, this is where your body was reactive the most, and this is why it was reactive, so let's focus there and tuning it down a little bit, let's managing that. I've written a series of different guided meditation that are recorded, and some of them are available to individuals in our YouTube channel for free, where you learn to do like body scans and learn to like assess your body and figure out where the knots are at and what is that enduring and telling you. We do things like new physiological and chakra alignment. There's some programs only I can do that because I'm equipped. So like I
Okay.
do a holistic approach where sometimes that required meeting people where they're at with spiritual readings and stuff like that. So far in the agency, I'm the only one who can do that. But everybody else is trained on how to educate people on that. So then that way they can start and figure it out on their own. So we
This
connect resources.
This is so cool. Oh my gosh. I did not know we were going to take this turn. I did not know we were going to take this turn. So just just a little note about me. I actually work at a software development company. So
Mm,
like when you were talking about virtual reality and like how the heat mapping and everything, these kind of things were like sparking so much in me. But the way that we can use technology to innovate healing
yeah.
and accelerate and just like be more effective with healing. It's insane like what you're talking about right now because it's like of course you would want to use these tools to help people. Right? So it's like the fact that you're actively applying and doing this to help change people's lives is amazing. I've never heard of anybody using technology in this way.
And this is where the problem lies, because this technology have existed and is very well available, but often it's not available to the black and brown because of access and financial resources, because insurance doesn't pay for that type of resource. So as a small business, I have to take a leap of faith and say, okay, I can't, my clients that is traumatized and is on section 8 and is barely making it or is on disability cannot afford a $300 tool, or pay for the services with somebody that is as equipped as I am. So then that made me like say, okay, how can they still have access within that capacity? So then that's when I switched to a group practice approach. So in the group practice approach, I try to spend more time in training and coordination. So then that way I can train other individuals, but I can utilize my other tools and skill set to get more high ticket clients. So then that kind of balance the book a little bit, right? So and I
That's
do
great business practice.
stuff
Oh
like
my God. I'm so glad you went there because
mhm.
I'm going to be launching a new initiative called Healing Her Finances, right? Because there has to be a way that you can understand how to reach and treat and serve your community by being it has to be a working smarter method. Like, we all want to do big things, we all want to make big impact, but we have to know how to have a strategy to implement in order to effectively do that. And it sounds like you figured out how to do exactly that. So you're a very wise businesswoman as well to think about the high ticket, and then I'm assuming is that going to help cover or offset some of the costs for some of the group coaching programs and things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So some of the like automatically a big part of my contracts with all my providers is that self care is essential. So that's part of their contracting. Like they have to implement self care. They actually have to come up with a self care plan annually for me. So then we check up on that. So it's not just like something that's put on paper. We actually try to walk the talk, and part of that is they implement their own like virtual reality, and they have the treatment plan like everybody else in the service, and they can use it as well. So they get access to it, because that gives two things: one, give them an opportunity for self-care, but also give them an opportunity to walk in the client's shoe, to create a deeper sense of empathy and really understand the impact it has, so they can become better advocate of the services. um, and we try to do things like, for example, people who may not have access to this type of treatment or can pay for it, but we try to do group activities where we can implement a little bit of it, so then they can get a taste, because it's so essential. I'm also an herbalist, so I have a different company that does a lot of, like, we have different tea blends and stuff like that. So that company is a girl. We do tea, essential oils,
Oh,
all
what's the name of it?
Zuzu Girl. It's
Zuzu Girl.
a
Okay.
company my 13-year-old started 2 years ago, but by the time she transitioned to middle school, she was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do the work anymore. That's too much
Yeah.
paperwork. I want to hang out with my friend." So she
No.
wanted to sell, and I ended up buying the company from her. So that
Wow.
there's a lot of herb, like natural remedies for that. So things like, oil blending, so we can know like how to engage different senses and stuff like that. How to implement like a restful, like good sleep hygiene, so people can actually sleep appropriately, not just pass out. Often, a lot of us just pass out, but
Yeah, that's so important.
good sleep hygiene, teas, herbal teas, and stuff like a different blend that activate different part of a being, different hormones and stuff like
I'm
that.
gonna need some of this. So I need the link to the store. I need to be able to go order something right after this is over. Um, That's so good. That's so good. And then you incorporate this business also into the program as well.
So yeah, so some of it like we make recommendation, but with the trauma informed, remember we're trying to empower people. So we may educate you about the importance and value, and we give you resources and link. It's up to you to make the decision. So I have some clients that actually subscribe to a subscription. We have a tea subscription, a wellness tea subscription. So then they get a package on a monthly basis on different teas for their wellness and stuff like that.
That is amazing. And I literally just said this the other day, but knowledge without application means nothing. So you have to be able to take action on something. And it sounds like for those of you who are listening, and make sure you check out, was it Zuzu Girl?
Mm-hmm.
And take action on getting the tools and the resources that'll be able to really help you heal for real, right? So these are the things that I love talking about, the practical things, because we need this. We need to know, what are the oils, like what are the teas, what is the pattern, what is the routines that I need to have in order to actually function better, right? From the physical, I don't even know how to say the word, but from the physical side, as well as the mental and emotional. So thank you so much for your holistic approach at everything. You really cover all the bases, it seems like. But
Try to,
um,
try to.
well, it sounds like you're doing a really great job. But just to back it up really, really, really quick, because you are a true warrior, right? How you are operating in your purpose, how you are using all the gifts that God has given you to help other people is completely admirable and utterly, just like I'm in awe of you. Like, you are an inspiration. But I know there must have been a time when you didn't feel like an inspiration, or you didn't feel like you were operating in your power. How did you, what were the tools? What did you have to do in actuality to transition from that victimhood to being the survivor that you are today, championing for other people?
So correction, it's not just there's a time, it's been periods of that. And I joke often, I tell people that's actually the confirmation that we're alive, is when we have these ups and downs and ups and downs. If you don't have the ups and downs, something is wrong, right? Because even like if you see in the hospital where we're connected to machines, your heart rate going up and down is the evidence of your stability, not flatlining, right?
Right.
So we don't want the flatlining. So I always, on a daily basis, in the hour, and a lot of my practice, like even on day to day, I have things like these, like where I burn different essences, and as you like this morning, I had different one burning and stuff like that, because I want to be intentional in changing the pace. Because virtual serving virtual one is a catch 22. Although it's great for the service recipient, because now you have more access, right? I have clients in South Africa. I have clients in Asia. I have actually over the summer I traveled to Pakistan for a client, like, and I spent a month in training and organizing and stuff like that. Like I have clients in Canada, I have clients everywhere. So I do that mostly from the comfort of my office, but it's also like I'm going on a road trip every day, and every day, every hour, I'm going through this road trip, and every client has their own unique bag of detritus that we're unpacking. So I have to have a level of shield and self-preservation. So that include like holistic practice for myself as well. So I have my teas and different teas, and in scheduling, I based on the clients and their reasoning and stuff like that, I have different people. Often people like, oh, why you no longer serve people on Fridays? Because on Fridays, I don't do clinical work on Fridays. On Fridays, I only do mediation or consultation, because mediation, it's more like a conflict and I'm just the coach, or I'm just the referee there, right? So I'm not exposed to as much. I'm just guiding the traffic. So that gives you an opportunity to slow it down a
You
little,
had to put some boundaries in place for
boundaries,
yourself.
some strategic boundaries on a daily basis to
Hmm.
help do that, right? And then, and keep in mind, I'm also like in my last stripe of a doctorate program that I started 4 years ago. That because of lifing, I've had to take breaks and stuff like that
Well,
because of.
congratulations to you for continuing to persist.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, but that's part of the community support that I have had. So when I have these lows, that deficit is, I'm a living, breathing being, just like all of us, right? So often we see that and then we dismiss it quickly. Like, yeah, I'm alive, but are we really living, breathing being? Are we acknowledging that and operating in that sense? So just like if you had a flower and a plant, you wouldn't just like say, okay, that plant is alive and I'm just gonna leave it in a corner. No, we pay attention to it, we engage with it, we make sure we water it, we give it what it needs. And sometimes I have had to like research my plant and trying to figure out what its needs are. I love for a while people were giving me um, orchids because I have an aunt that knows I love orchids. So she would give me orchids, and then other people would see orchid in my house, so they would start giving me orchids. But orchids are very fragile, delicate, but they're very resilient plant, right? So if you don't pay attention or you don't invest in getting to know that orchid, you're going to kill it because you're gonna over water it or under care for it, right? Similarly with our being, we're a delicate, fragile being, so we have to investigate. We have to be willing to get to know ourselves, discover our being. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people. But it's a beautiful journey. I would say to anybody, like, lean into that. If you're not willing to get to know yourself, how are you going to be an advocate for your being? How are you going to set the blueprint and boundaries for other people and how to interact with you and do things for you or support you if you don't even know what your needs are? So, like, lean into that. So, self discovery during that up and that down, I pay enough attention to know when I'm low. How do I know I'm low? First thing that come up when I'm low, I don't check my email as much. So that I would log in and I see a lot of like notification. I'm like, ugh, I'm feeling a little low. So then I will lean into that. Why am I feeling low? Because again, like I said, I suffer ADHD. Sometimes we bite more than we can chew because of that. Because we see things that may not necessarily be relevant immediately, but because we see it, we dive into it. So then that keep us busy, but also burn us out quickly. So doing so, I do things for myself on a daily basis. Like on a daily basis, I start my morning in my personal sauna. Like, and that's something that anybody have access to. They have them on Amazon for like 150. I sit there in that sauna for like that 45 minutes, and some days I don't have 45 minutes. I can only give 20 minutes, right? But I sit there in that sauna. There's a little hot bucket, put a little bit of essential oil based on whatever my needs are for that day. I will have different blend for that. And I just sit there and I'm just still in that heat. I sweat it out. There are a lot of health benefits to that, but also it's a place where I can be still for a few minutes. So I can lean in and figure it out. What's my low? What's my high? What's my needs for the day? How can I best respond? What resources am I lacking for the day? If that means, hey, I can't do drop off or I can't do pick up this morning, I got to reach out to a partner. If it means, hey, I have something else that I need to do and I need to call out to a family or a friend to support me, I'm going to look into that. But that requires a little bit of self compassion and being still. Self compassion is the best way we can love ourselves. Because if you're not giving yourself compassion, you're going to say, then I don't deserve other people's compassion. So I can't call and ask somebody for help if I need it, because why would they help me? Because I'm already saying I don't deserve the help. We gotta give that to ourselves. So I have lows every day. I just know that and anticipate it enough. So I put a lot of trap for myself throughout my day to help me redirect back to getting that proper support. And things like strict boundaries, like my cell phone from the time of like 10 to 7 a.m., nobody will be able to reach me. And that's an intentional boundary because I've been in places and positions where I was on call 24/7 and that disturbed my sleep. If it disturbed my sleep, it disturbed my opportunity to function appropriately. And sometimes people going to violate that because you don't have the boundary. So if even if I want to and maybe I don't have the skill set or capacity to sell somebody, please don't call me at midnight or 1 o'clock just because you drop, right? By me just using
Right.
technology and put that boundary on my phone
Hmm.
that hey, put a note that in mode sleep mode is from 10 o'clock to 7 a.m. Automatically when anybody dial my number or go to any of my social media or anything like that, it will tell them that I'm not available at this time.
That's so good. That's a master class on just personal wellness and taking care of yourself, soul care. all the actual things that we say in a very like fluffy kind of way, you have the disciplines in your routine that help you accomplish that. And I think that focus that you have with doing that is the key, because we can think about all the things that we want to do, like, oh, it would be nice to have a sauna, you know? But you have to get the sauna. You have to make the time. You have to put the setting in your phone in order for it to be from 10 to 7, right? We actually have to take action on these things to be able to live in the fruits of the discipline,
It takes
right?
a little bit of investment. So, but it's an
Hmm.
investment that once you do, it's not that much. Like I keep this thing right here. I don't really like chocolate, but I appreciate a good Ferrero Rocher. That's the only chocolate that I seem to like. So often my friends and family members will get me boxes of Ferrero Rocher. But this is like my self care box, for example, right? It's a simple self care activity. And what that is just a few things that I have rules on self care, that when
Hmm.
people like my clients and some of like my people, they know the rules. It's 1 hour a day, every day. That's your self-care. It's something that you do rather than just being. So it's not watching TV. It has to be an activity that has a flow and exchange of energy. So I just wrote down a list of activities, right? Different things and random things, and I put them in a word, and then I put them in lines, and then I just like cut out that. So it took me like what, an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do that one thing, but I did that, and it would last me. I think I had enough there for like a year, right? Um, when I did that, I do this around the summertime, so that's why my box is still full. But every day, and I just take each of the paper and I wrote it down, and it makes it a little bit of venture. So as an ADHD person, I'm like a adrenaline junkie. So the little surprise, the discovery is the thing that makes me excited, right? So I could just pick one of these things every day and say, what am I gonna do today for self care? And unpacking this one, we'll find out what my self care activities for today.
This is so cool.
So this is a simple thing. Swing on a swing set. Too many adults forgot how much fun it is. So guess what? It's Saturday. I also have the JIT at the house that been asking to go to the park. I'm gonna go to the park and just spend an hour with some music and swing on the swing. That's it.
I love this. I love this so much. Oh my God. I can see this being a thing, maybe like a product that you implement. Some, I don't know if you want to extend that to other people that can help them with maybe some pre-made things, but we need this. Like, and
Mm.
I know we can make the effort of going ahead and doing that, but honestly, girl, like if you went ahead and made all these different boxes, we would just buy the boxes from you and just go ahead and, all right, this is what we got to do today. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
So it's little things like that. It's an investment. If you're not invested in yourself and you're not intentional enough about discovering, about connecting with yourself, it's like how can you expect other people to do so, right? So as partners, we expect our partners to play the dates and stuff like that. Like no, there are dates like every Friday morning. I have a date with myself. I take myself on a nice breakfast. So because you don't realize how much like life thing you are doing on a regular
Yeah.
basis, and you're disconnecting. Like we're so connected with what is everybody's need, especially when you become a parent. Like I forgot like what do I like for breakfast. So I take
Mm.
myself on a breakfast. I do an annual self retreat where I disappear from everybody for like a week or two, and I go on a self discovery journey. And I know not everybody can actually do that, but you can do a little bit of that. And some of my
Yeah.
clients have incorporated that. Maybe they're not yet to the point of 2 weeks, but I do 2 weeks because I'm also unpacking from work during that 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So that's some of the practices. Do things to really return back to your being and reconnect with yourself.
Mm. Returning back to your being. I love that so much. There, you're just a wealth of knowledge. Like all, in this time alone, I feel so grateful because everything that you shared is things that we can take action on right away. Like as soon as you stop listening to this podcast, you can go ahead and take action on every single point that she's given. So we honor you. Thank you so much for giving your time, your expertise, your energy with us, your innovative insights. We appreciate you. If there's any last thing, and I normally go to this point, because it's about women igniting their halo, turning their light back on, right? And that's kind of symbolic of our mind, right?
Mhm.
So, if there's any one thing that you can share with a woman right now who's struggling to do that, to turn her light back on, what could you tell her?
I would say that, contrary to popular belief and programming, like be well aware and be mindful that as a woman you are the giver of all. If you look at things, anything that is the reproductive system of anything is referred to in the feminine terms, because as a woman you are the giver of all. So whatever you think you are lacking, whatever you think you are needing, whatever you think you want, you are the giver of that something. But that thing is not going to be available until you unpack you. So this is the journey, is get to know yourself, lean into the things that you feels good, and ask for yes please, more please, and the things that create discomfort, pause and investigate it, whatever it is. And most importantly, write things down. There's a realm of like different rooms and rabbit hole or brain can go into, and that leads to a whole other topic, cognitive biases and stuff like that. But like writing things down so you can dissect your own thoughts and your own voice versus everybody else. Because once you get to the point of identify your own voice, the limit is endless. You are a wealth of knowledge, you are the source of all, you are the giver and the birth, like, channel of all. It's just you gotta learn your own
Yes.
voice and learning your own tune, and not be afraid to dance to that own tune, because that same tune is deserving of space and capacity of listening to. So just lean into your own being, get to know yourself. It's a beautiful person, beautiful being.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
How
for.
can we connect with you? How can we stay connected with you?
So through my website is a great way to connect. So even though many people would call and they say, "Oh, they want to connect with me," I promise you, we do a lot of heavy lifting, and before we get anybody into practice, because we make sure that everybody's trauma informed. So what I'm saying and sharing today, everybody has some level of similar roots of that. So we all have different approaches and different clientele we serve, but everybody in the department will have similar background and capacity. So you can log in online, request services to any of the practitioners, or get to know the other practitioners. That's one way. So you could call, and the phone number is 786-779-8898. You can also call and request services for service providers that are listening, or other people that already have organizations and want to just figure out how to make more trauma informed. They can also call the same number or go to the website and request a consultation. Actually, one of the things I'm doing till the end of the year, I'm giving out a few like free 15 to 30-minute consultation, just to give people access so they can book a session to unpack and figure out what if it's a worth the investment about consultation services or entrepreneurship. Like I do mentorship program as well for the entrepreneurship, as well as the spiritual awareness. So there are a lot of people who have amazing ideas and doing great work. They just don't have the knowing how to, or the self efficiency where they can actually identify whatever load you've carried, whatever trauma you've endured. There's a level of that is going to be an amazing contribution to your journey as an entrepreneur. So I don't counter that. So we have a program that is a trauma informed entrepreneurship program that we can embark at any level, from just the idea to like I'm doing this and I'm not bringing any revenue, and we unpack the being behind the business so then we can actually get you to move. So I would say just reach out, go to our website, which is www.amitiewellness.com. You could call the phone number, or you could send us an email at intake@amitiewellness.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we're going to have to bring you back on for more, especially with the entrepreneurship topics as well, because we need this as women, especially as trauma survivors. But thank you so much. Thank you so much again.
Thank you
And
for having me. I hope I was worth your at the time and worth listening to.
are you kidding me? This has been a huge boost, I feel like, for so many women that are listening, to just know how to get in tune with themselves and find whatever they need within themselves to move forward, power forward, and be that woman that God has called them to be. So we honor you again. And this
Honored
has
to
been
be.
another episode of Healing Her Halo.